The rain had started before dawn, turning the forest path into a ribbon of mud that clung to my boots with every step. I pulled my threadbare cloak tighter, though it did little against the cold that seemed to seep through fabric and skin alike, settling somewhere deep in my chest, where warmth had become a distant memory. The marketplace would be crowded today despite the weather, perhaps because of it. People sought shelter, commerce, the illusion of community. I sought work, any work. Though the stares that followed me through town had long since taught me that my pale hair and quieter nature marked me as something apart. The smell of wet earth mixed with pine resin filled my lungs as I took the shortcut through the woods. My father used to say that the forest remembered everything, that if you listened carefully enough, you could hear the stories it held. But my father had been gone 3 years now, and the only thing I heard these days was the hollow echo of my own footsteps, and the occasional whisper of villagers who thought I couldn't hear them. Too soft, too strange. Those eyes see too much, as if gentleness were a disease, as if compassion made you less rather than more. That's when I heard it, a sound that didn't belong to wind or rain, a whimper, high-pitched and desperate, coming from somewhere off the path. I should have kept walking. The elders had been clear. The woods belonged to them now, to the lichens who'd claimed this territory 2 generations ago. We lived in an uneasy truce, humans keeping to our villages, they to their hidden compounds and midnight hunts. Good people didn't wander. Good people didn't ask questions. Good people certainly didn't investigate strange sounds in a forest that wasn't truly ours anymore. But I'd never been particularly good at being good in the way others expected. The whimpering grew more frantic as I pushed through the undergrowth, branches catching at my cloak and hair, and then I saw her, a pup. No more than a few weeks old, her fur matted with mud and rain, caught in a tangle of thorny vines near a fallen log. She was beautiful, even in distress. Her coat a silver gray that seemed to shimmer despite the gloom, her eyes wide and golden and fixed on me with an intelligence that made my breath catch. "Hey there," I whispered, dropping to my knees in the mud without thinking. "You're all right. I've got you." She whined again, and I could see the thorns had drawn blood along her front leg. My hands moved carefully, gently working to free her without causing more pain. My father's voice echoed in memory. "Every creature deserves kindness, even the ones that frighten others, especially those ones, perhaps. Fear makes people cruel, but it doesn't have to make you cruel too." "I know it hurts," I murmured, finally pulling the last vine free. The pup immediately pressed against me, trembling, and I gathered her into my arms despite the mud now coating us both. She was heavier than she looked, solid with the promise of the powerful creature she'd become. "Where's your family, little one?" As if in answer, a howl split the air, not the distant call of ordinary wolves, but something deeper, more resonant, a sound that seemed to vibrate through the ground itself. The pup's ears perked up, and she squirmed in my arms, yipping in response. Logic said to put her down and run. Instinct said the same, but looking into those golden eyes, feeling her small body still trembling against mine, I couldn't. Whatever was coming, this little creature was someone's daughter, someone's beloved. I knew what it meant to lose family, to search desperately for something precious and find only absence. I stood, cradling the pup, and waited. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Rain pattered against leaves, creating a rhythm that matched my hammering heart. Then the undergrowth exploded with movement, and they emerged. 3 massive forms that moved with impossible grace, their bodies rippling between wolf and something more, something that made my hindbrain scream predator. Run, hide. The largest was pure black, his shoulders level with my chest even on 4 legs, his eyes a burning amber that fixed on me with an intensity that should have turned me to stone. Behind him came 2 others, gray and russet, flanking him like guards, but it was the black one who held my attention, who moved forward with a dominance that spoke of leadership, of power, of danger. The pup barked and wriggled, and I realized with a sick lurch that I was holding her tighter, my arms an instinctive cage. Slowly, carefully, I knelt again and set her down. She immediately bounded toward the black wolf, her tail wagging frantically, her small body radiating joy. He shifted then, The change was faster than I could track, fur and fang giving way to human form, and suddenly a man crouched before the pup, naked and unbothered by the rain or cold or my presence. His hands, large and capable, ran over her with a gentleness that seemed impossible given his size, checking for injuries. When his fingers found the scratches on her leg, his jaw tightened. She was caught in thorns, I heard myself say, my voice smaller than I'd intended. I freed her. She's not badly hurt. Those amber eyes lifted to meet mine, and the weight of that gaze nearly sent me backward. He was beautiful in a way that felt dangerous, all sharp angles and controlled power. His dark hair plastered to his skull by rain, his body marked with scars that told stories of violence survived. But it was his eyes that held me, ancient, weighing, seeing far more than I wanted to reveal. You helped her. His voice was deep, rough, more growl than speech. She needed help. The words came out steadier than I felt. Anyone would have... No. He stood in one fluid motion, and I had to crane my neck to maintain eye contact. The other two wolves had shifted as well, men now, watching with expressions I couldn't read. Most would have run. Most would have feared what coming to her aid might cost them. I swallowed hard. I'm not most people, I suppose. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, perhaps, or interest. The pup circled his legs, yipping, and he reached down absently to stroke her head. The gesture was so tender, so at odds with the raw power he emanated, that I felt something in my chest twist painfully. "What's your name?" he asked. "Elena." It slipped out before I could think better of it. Names had power, my father had said. But then, this man, this lichen, already had power enough over me. If he wanted to hurt me, my name would be the least of my concerns. Elena. The way he said it sent a shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with cold. I am Dmitri. This is my territory. And this, he gestured to the pup, is my daughter, Nadia. The words settled over me with the weight of revelation. Not just any lichen then, the Lichen King himself, the one whose name was spoken in whispers, whose territory extended for hundreds of miles, whose word was law among his kind. And I'd just scooped up his child like she was a stray kitten. I didn't know, I managed. I'm sorry if Why do you apologize? He tilted his head, studying me like I was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. You saved my daughter from pain and fear. You could have ignored her cries, but you didn't. You could have run when you heard us coming, but you stayed to return her safely. These are not things that warrant apology. The rain was falling harder now, plastering my pale hair to my face, but I couldn't seem to move, couldn't break away from his gaze. Behind him, one of his companions, the gray one, shifted his weight impatiently. Dmitri, we should return. The council meeting can wait. Dmitri's tone brooked no argument. His eyes never left mine. You're cold, wet. The village is still a mile from here, yes? I nodded mutely. Come. My compound is closer. You'll dry off, warm yourself, and then we'll see you safely home. Every warning I'd ever received screamed at me to refuse. Good people didn't enter lichen territory. Good people didn't accept invitations from predators. But as Nadia bounded back to me, pawing at my mud-covered skirt with obvious affection, as Dmitri extended his hand with something that looked almost like hope in those ancient eyes, I found myself reaching back. His palm was warm despite the rain, his grip careful, as though I were something fragile that might break. And perhaps I was. Perhaps we both were, in ways that had nothing to do with physical strength. All right, I whispered, and felt the forest shift around us, the rain soften, as though the world itself recognized that something had changed, that paths had intersected in a way that couldn't be undone. He smiled then, a small, startling thing that transformed his face entirely, and began to lead me deeper into the woods, toward whatever fate awaited in the den of wolves. The compound revealed itself gradually, like a secret the forest had been keeping. We walked in silence, Dmitri's hand still loosely holding mine as though he'd forgotten he'd taken it, or perhaps didn't want to let go. Nadia bounded ahead, her earlier fear forgotten in the resilience of youth, occasionally circling back to yip at us before racing forward again. The two other lichens, the gray one had been introduced as Sebastian, The russet, as Julian, flanked us at a distance that felt both protective and confining. The buildings emerged from the trees like they'd grown there, their stone and timber construction blending seamlessly with the forest itself. Not the crude hovels I'd imagined in the village stories, but elegant structures with carved door frames and windows that glowed with warm firelight. Smoke rose from chimneys, carrying the scent of wood smoke and cooking meat, something rich and herbed that made my empty stomach clench painfully. I couldn't remember the last time I'd eaten anything more substantial than stale bread and thin soup. People appeared as we entered, lichens in human form, men and women who stopped their tasks to stare. Their eyes tracked me with varying degrees of curiosity and suspicion, and I felt my shoulders try to hunch inward, that old familiar urge to make myself smaller, less noticeable. But Dimitri's presence beside me seemed to create a bubble of safety, his mere proximity keeping the stares from transforming into something more threatening. "She helped Nadia," Sebastian announced to the growing crowd, his voice carrying an edge of disbelief. "Found her caught in thorn bushes near the old oak." A murmur rippled through the gathered lichens. A woman with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes stepped forward, her gaze moving between Dimitri and me with sharp intelligence. "The pup wandered again?" "She did." Dimitri's voice held a note of exasperation mixed with affection. "And this human, Elena, stopped to help her when she could have kept walking." The woman's expression softened as she looked at me. "Then she has our gratitude. I'm Vera, the compound's healer. You're soaked through, child. Come, let's get you dry before you catch your death." She reached for my arm and I tensed instinctively. Dimitri's hand tightened fractionally on mine, a gesture so subtle I almost missed it. "She'll come to my quarters first," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. I would speak with her. Vera's eyebrows rose, and I caught the flicker of something in her expression. Surprise, concern, perhaps even a hint of knowing amusement, but she simply nodded and stepped back. "As you wish, my lord. My lord." The title sent a fresh wave of unreality washing over me. I was being led through a lichen compound by their king, had held his daughter in my arms, had touched him without permission or fear. The Elena of this morning, trudging through the rain toward another day of rejection and barely suppressed hunger, would never have believed any of this possible. Dimitri's quarters were in the largest building, a structure of gray stone with a heavy wooden door that he pushed open with his free hand. The interior was warm, blessedly so, heat radiating from a massive fireplace that dominated one wall. The furniture was simple but well made. A large bed covered in furs, a wooden table with chairs, shelves lined with books that surprised me with their abundance. Maps covered one wall, marking territories and boundaries in careful detail. "Wait here," Dimitri said, finally releasing my hand. The absence of his touch felt like a loss, which was absurd. "I'll find dry clothes for you." He disappeared through a doorway, and I was left standing in the center of the room, dripping onto the wooden floor, my mind racing. What was I doing here? What did he want from me? The stories never prepared you for this. For predators who spoke softly, who looked at you like you mattered, who held their daughters with gentle hands. Nadia had followed us inside, and now sat at my feet, her tail thumping against the floor, her golden eyes fixed on my face with unwavering attention. I knelt down slowly, and she immediately pressed her muzzle into my palm, a small sound of contentment rumbling in her chest. "You scared your father badly, didn't you?" I whispered, stroking the soft fur between her ears. "He loves you very much." I could see it in his eyes. "She has a gift for finding trouble." Dimitri's voice made me jump. He'd returned with an armful of clothing, a shirt that would hang to my knees, thick woolen pants, socks. Like her mother did, past tense. I looked up at him, saw the shadow that crossed his face, and understood. "I'm sorry." "Why do you apologize for things that aren't your fault?" He set the clothes on the bed, then moved to stoke the fire, adding more wood with practiced efficiency. "My mate died 3 years ago. Complications from Nadia's birth. It was no one's fault, and yet everyone apologizes, as though words could fill the space she left behind. 3 years. The same amount of time since I'd lost my father. I swallowed against the sudden tightness in my throat. I apologize because I understand that particular emptiness, and because sometimes acknowledging pain is all we can offer each other. His hand stilled on the poker. When he turned to face me, his expression had shifted into something raw, unguarded. Your father? Yes. A fever took him. The healers in the village. I shook my head, not wanting to speak of their refusal to treat him properly, their whispered concerns about my father's kindness toward unnatural things, their belief that compassion toward lichens was somehow a betrayal of humanity. He taught me that every life matters, that fear and cruelty are choices, not inevitabilities. He sounds like he was a good man. He was the best man I've ever known. The words came out fiercer than I'd intended, and Dimitri's eyes widened slightly before his expression gentled. Then he raised a daughter worthy of his teaching. He gestured toward the clothes. Change. I'll wait outside. When you're dry, we'll talk. He left, pulling the door closed behind him, and I was alone with Nadia and the crackling fire and the overwhelming strangeness of this day. My hands shook as I peeled off my soaked clothing, the fabric clinging stubbornly to my skin. The borrowed clothes were enormous, smelling of pine and something wild and distinctly male that made my pulse quicken in ways I didn't want to examine. I had to roll the pants multiple times and cinch them with my own belt to keep them from falling, and the shirt hung nearly to my knees. But they were warm and dry, and that was enough. There was a mirror on the wall, and I caught sight of myself, pale hair plastered to my skull, eyes too large in my thin face, swimming in clothes that made me look like a child playing dress-up. What did he see when he looked at me? What could a man like him, a king among predators, possibly want from someone like me? A knock at the door made me start. "Come in," I called, my voice barely above a whisper. Dimitri entered, and his gaze traveled over me with an expression I couldn't decipher.
Better? Yes, thank you. He moved to the table, gesturing for me to join him. When I sat, he poured water from a pitcher into 2 cups, then produced bread and cheese and dried meat from a cupboard. Simple food, but more than I'd seen in days. My stomach growled audibly, and heat flooded my face. "Eat," he said simply, pushing the food toward me. "Please." I wanted to refuse, wanted to maintain some dignity, but hunger won. I ate slowly, trying not to seem desperate, but I could feel his eyes on me, assessing, understanding more than I wanted him to. "When did you last have a proper meal?" His voice was carefully neutral, but I heard the edge beneath it. "A few days ago. Maybe a week." I forced myself to meet his gaze. "Work has been scarce lately. I'm not strong enough for field work and the other positions." I trailed off, not wanting to speak of the doors closed in my face, the whispers that followed me, the way my compassion toward all creatures had marked me as dangerous in a village that valued conformity above all else. "Because you're kind." It wasn't a question. "Because you refuse to see my kind as monsters." "You're not monsters." The words burst out with surprising vehemence. "You're people. Different people, yes, with different natures, but people nonetheless." My father believed that, and I believe it too. The real monsters are the ones who choose cruelty when kindness is possible. Dimitri leaned back in his chair, studying me with that unnerving intensity. "You're an unusual woman, Elena. In the village, they fear you for your differences. Here, those same differences make you remarkable." "I'm not remarkable. I'm just—" "You are." He leaned forward, his elbows on the table, his face closer to mine than it had been. "You walked into danger to save a creature you didn't know. You stood your ground when 3 full-grown lichens emerged from the forest. You speak of my people with respect when your own kind would see us destroyed. Tell me that isn't remarkable." I couldn't answer. The air between us felt charged, heavy with something I didn't have words for. Nadia chose that moment to yip from her position by the fire, breaking the tension, and Dimitri's mouth quirked in what might have been a smile. "She likes you," he said. "She doesn't like most people. Even among our kind, she's selective. She's beautiful." I watched the pup chase her tail in a circle. "And brave. She didn't stop calling for help, even when she was scared and hurt, like someone else I recently met." The compliment, gentle as it was, made my chest tight. I looked down at my hands, at the calluses and scars that marked them. "What happens now?"
You've fed me, given me dry clothes. Surely you don't make a habit of rescuing wayward humans from the rain? No, he admitted, but then most humans don't rescue my daughter first. Elena, I have a proposition for you. My stomach dropped. Here it was. The price for kindness. Nothing came free. I'd learned that well enough. What kind of proposition? The council meeting Sebastian mentioned. It's happening tonight. Leaders from 3 neighboring packs will be here, along with various subordinates and their families. It's tense. There are those who believe we should break the truce with the human villages, who see your kind as nothing but prey or nuisances. I've been arguing for peace, for coexistence, but my position is weakened by the fact that I'm alone. Alone? Without a mate. In our culture, a king without a mate is seen as incomplete, his judgment questioned. If I appeared at the meeting with you, no. I stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. You can't be suggesting, not as my mate, he said quickly, also rising. I wouldn't ask that of you, but as a guest, an ally. A living example that humans and lichens can interact peacefully, that your kind isn't universally opposed to ours. Your presence would strengthen my argument. My presence would make me a target. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold despite the fire's warmth. You said yourself there are those who see humans as prey. I would protect you. He moved closer, not touching, but near enough that I could feel the heat radiating from him. No one would dare harm you under my roof, under my protection. But I understand if you're afraid. It's a great deal to ask of someone I've only just met, someone who owes me nothing. You fed me, gave me dry clothes, kept your people from... I gestured vaguely toward the door, the compound beyond. I owe you something. You owe me nothing. His voice was fierce. What I offer comes freely, in gratitude for what you did for Nadia. If you choose to help me, it will be your choice, not an obligation. I looked at him. Really looked at him. Saw the shadows under his eyes, the tension in his shoulders, the weight of leadership that sat heavy on him. Saw a man trying to bridge a divide that had existed for generations, fighting against prejudice from both sides. Saw someone who, like me, was trying to choose kindness in a world that often punished it. And I thought of my father, of his voice in my memory. When you can help, you help. Doesn't matter if it's hard or scary. What matters is that you tried. All right, I heard myself say. I'll do it. I'll stand with you at your meeting. The relief that washed over Dimitri's face was so profound it made him look younger, less burdened. Thank you, Elena. You have no idea what this means. I have some idea. I managed a shaky smile. When is this meeting? Sunset. 3 hours from now. He moved back to the table, his mind clearly already working through logistics. Vera can help you prepare, find you proper clothes. You'll sit at my right hand, as an honored guest. And Elena? Yes? Whatever happens tonight, whatever is said, remember that you are under my protection. You are safe here. I give you my word. His word. The promise of a lichen king. It should have terrified me. Instead, as I nodded my agreement and watched him smile, really smile, warm and genuine and transformative, I felt something else entirely. I felt like maybe, just maybe, I'd finally found somewhere I belonged. Vera arrived within the hour, her arms laden with fabric and her expression a mixture of curiosity and maternal concern. She shooed Dimitri out with a firmness that suggested their relationship went beyond healer and king, more akin to family, and set about transforming me from a rain-soaked waif into something presentable for a council meeting. The dress belonged to Dimitri's mate, Vera said softly, holding up a gown of deep forest green. He keeps her things, though he rarely looks at them. That he offered this. It means something, child. Do you understand? I touched the fabric reverently. Soft wool mixed with silk, finer than anything I'd ever worn. I'm not trying to replace her. I just want to help him. I know. But sometimes helping and becoming intertwined are the same thing. Her knowing eyes met mine. You feel it too, don't you? That pull between you. I don't know what you mean. The lie tasted bitter on my tongue. Vera simply smiled and began helping me into the dress. It fit surprisingly well, though we had to take in the waist slightly. As she worked, she talked about the compound, about the different families that made up Dimitri's pack, about the delicate politics that governed Lycan society. I learned that Sebastian was Dimitri's second-in-command, fiercely loyal but hot-tempered. Julian was the pack's scout, quieter, more observant. There were others too, warriors, hunters, craftspeople, all bound together by complex webs of loyalty and hierarchy. "The visiting alphas will test you," Vera warned, pinning my pale hair into an elegant twist that left a few tendrils framing my face. "They'll see you as weakness, as proof that Dimitri has gone soft. You must be strong but not aggressive, calm but not submissive. It's a narrow path to walk. I've been walking narrow paths my whole life." I studied my reflection in the mirror, barely recognizing the woman staring back. The dress brought out hints of green in my gray eyes, and the styling made my pale hair look intentional rather than washed out. What if I fail him? Then you fail trying, which is more than most would dare. Vera squeezed my shoulder gently. "You have a good heart, Elena. Let it guide you tonight." A knock at the door announced Dimitri's return. When he entered and saw me, he stopped dead, his expression shifting through surprise into something deeper, something that made my breath catch. For a long moment, he simply stared, and I fought the urge to fidget under his scrutiny. "You look..." He seemed to struggle for words. "The dress suits you." Vera worked miracles. I smoothed my hands down the skirt, nervous energy demanding an outlet. "Are you sure about this? It's not too late to change your mind, I'm sure." He crossed to me, and I noticed he'd changed as well. Dark pants and a shirt of deep charcoal, a heavy cloak pinned at his shoulder with a silver brooch shaped like a wolf's head. He looked every inch the king, powerful and commanding, and yet when he took my hand, his touch remained gentle. "Are you?" I thought of the village, of the empty house I'd returned to, of the days stretching ahead filled with hunger and loneliness, and the crushing weight of not belonging. Then I looked at Dimitri, at the hope in his eyes, at Nadia playing happily in the corner, at Vera watching us with her knowing smile. "I'm sure," I said, and meant it. The great hall was already filling when we arrived. It was a massive space, the ceiling supported by carved beams. The walls hung with tapestries depicting hunts and battles and moments of pack history. A fire roared in a pit at the room's center, casting dancing shadows that made the assembled Lycans look even more otherworldly. Long tables had been arranged in a U-shape, with a high seat at the head, Dimitri's throne, though calling it that felt too grandiose for the simple, sturdy chair. Conversations died as we entered. Every eye turned toward us, toward me, and I felt the weight of their attention like a physical thing. Some faces showed curiosity, others suspicion, a few outright hostility. Dimitri's hand tightened on mine, a silent reminder of his promise of protection. "My people," Dimitri's voice rang out, commanding instant silence. "Some of you have already heard that we have a guest tonight. This is Elena, who this morning saved my daughter from injury without thought for her own safety. She comes as my honored guest and under my personal protection. Any who would question this, speak now." The challenge in his tone was unmistakable. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then an older man near the front, gray-haired and scarred, with eyes like chips of ice, rose slowly to his feet. "With respect, my king, bringing a human to a council meeting is unprecedented. How can we discuss matters of pack security with an outsider present? Elena is not just any human." Dimitri guided me forward, his hand now at the small of my back, warm and steady. "She represents what our peace with the human villages could be: cooperation, mutual respect, the possibility of coexistence beyond mere tolerance. If we cannot speak freely in front of one human who has shown us nothing but kindness, how can we claim to want peace with humanity at all?" The logic was sound, but I could see doubt on many faces. The gray-haired man sat down slowly, his expression unconvinced, but unwilling to argue further. Dimitri led me to the high seat, and I realized with a start that he intended for me to sit beside him, in a position of honor that made my role unmistakable. "Are you trying to start a war within your own pack?" I whispered as he held the chair for me. "I'm trying to end one before it begins." he murmured back. Trust me, so I sat, my back straight, my hands folded in my lap to hide their trembling, and tried to look like I belonged at the right hand of a lichen king. Sebastian and Julian took positions behind us, their presence both protective and intimidating. Nadia, blessedly, had been left in Vera's care. This was no place for a pup. The visiting alphas arrived with a cold gust of wind that made the fire flicker. They were impressive, all three of them. 2 men and a woman, each radiating the kind of power that made the air shimmer. The first was tall and lean with copper-colored hair, his movements predatory and precise. The second was broader, built like a bear, with a black beard and calculating eyes. The woman was somewhere between them in size, her silver hair braided down her back, her face marked with ritual scars that spoke of battles won. They stopped when they saw me, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop further. The copper-haired one spoke first, his voice carrying an accent I couldn't place. Dimitri, I see the rumors are true. You've taken a human pet. The insult was deliberate, designed to provoke. I felt Dimitri tense beside me, but his voice remained level when he responded. I have extended hospitality to someone who showed kindness to my daughter. Surely even you understand the concept of gratitude, Victor. Victor, the copper-haired alpha, smiled, but there was nothing friendly in it. Gratitude is one thing. Elevating a human to a position of honor while we discuss pack matters is quite another. Unless... His eyes narrowed, studying me with disturbing intensity. Unless she's more than just a grateful king's charity case. Tell me, little human, what exactly is your relationship with our Dimitri? The room held its breath. I could feel dozens of eyes on me, waiting to see if I'd crumble, if I'd prove their suspicions right, that I was weak, that humans had no place here, that Dimitri's judgment was compromised. I thought of my father, of Nadia's trusting eyes, of Dimitri's hand in mine, steady and warm, and I lifted my chin and met Victor's stare without flinching. My relationship with King Dimitri is one of mutual respect, I said clearly, my voice carrying further than I'd expected. He has shown me kindness, and I have chosen to support his vision of peace between our peoples. If that threatens you, perhaps the problem isn't with me, but with your own fear of change. Silence. Absolute, ringing silence. Then the bearded alpha laughed, a deep, booming sound that shattered the tension like glass. Well, she has teeth after all. I like her, Dimitri. She's got more spine than half the wolves in this room. He strode forward, offering me his hand in a very human gesture. I am Gregor, Alpha of the Northern Reaches. You're either very brave or very foolish, girl, but I respect both. I shook his hand, relieved when his grip was firm but not crushing. Elena, and I'm probably a bit of both. The woman Alpha moved forward next, her gaze assessing but less hostile than Victor's. I am Sonia, of the Eastern Territories. Tell me, Elena, do all humans possess your courage, or are you unique among your kind? It was a trap, though a gentler one. Claim courage for all humans, and I'd be proven a liar by the village's treatment of lichens. Claim uniqueness, and I'd be admitting humans in general couldn't be trusted. I can only speak for myself, I said carefully, but I believe courage exists in every people, human and lichen alike. It's fear that divides us, fear of the unknown, fear of change, fear of admitting we might be wrong. I choose not to let fear make my decisions. Sonia's lips twitched in what might have been approval. She took her seat without further comment, which I took as a victory. Victor remained standing, his expression dark. Pretty words, he said coldly. But words are cheap. Actions matter, and the actions of humans toward our kind have been hostile at best, violent at worst. What makes you different, Elena? Why should we trust that you won't run back to your village and tell them everything you've seen here, giving them the intelligence they'd need to destroy us? The accusation hung in the air, and I realized this was the real test. Not just of me, but of Dimitri's judgment in bringing me here. If I couldn't answer this, everything would fall apart. You shouldn't trust me, I said quietly, and heard the murmur that rippled through the room. Not yet. Trust is earned, not given. But I can tell you this, I have no village to return to, not really, They've made it clear I don't belong there, that my compassion toward those they fear makes me dangerous. If I betrayed you now, I'd be betraying the first place that's treated me like I matter. Why would I destroy the only kindness I've been shown? Dimitri's hand found mine under the table, squeezed once. Victor stared at me for a long moment, then slowly, grudgingly, took his seat. We shall see, he said. Time will prove your words true or false, little human. For now, I'll respect Dimitri's claim of protection over you. But know this. One hint of treachery, one whisper of betrayal, and no king's protection will save you from my judgment. Fair enough, I managed, though my heart was racing so fast I thought everyone must surely hear it. Dimitri rose, drawing all attention back to himself. Now that introductions are complete, let us begin. We have much to discuss: border disputes, hunting territory, and most importantly, the future of our relationship with the human settlements. Elena's presence here proves that coexistence is possible, that we need not be enemies. Let us use this opportunity to build something better than what we've had. The meeting began in earnest then, discussions flowing into arguments into negotiations. I sat quietly, listening, learning. I learned that the borders were shrinking as human villages expanded, that young lichens were growing restless, wanting to reclaim territory their grandparents had surrendered. That fear on both sides was pushing everyone toward a conflict nobody really wanted, but everyone seemed to expect. And through it all, Dimitri navigated with a patience and wisdom that made me understand why his people followed him. He listened more than he spoke. He found compromises where others saw only ultimatums. He reminded them, again and again, that peace was strength, not weakness. Hours passed. The fire burned low and was rebuilt. Food and drink appeared. I ate sparingly, too nervous to stomach much. At one point, Gregor addressed me directly, asking about conditions in the human village, and I answered honestly, describing the hunger and fear, the way resources had become scarce, the way mistrust was growing on our side too. Fear makes people cruel, I concluded, echoing my father's words, on both sides. If we could find a way to ease that fear, maybe we could ease the cruelty too. It was Sonia who suggested a trade agreement, lichen-hunted game in exchange for human-made goods, a practical step toward cooperation. Victor opposed it, but Gregor and Dimitri supported it, and eventually even Victor conceded it was worth attempting on a small scale. By the time the meeting ended, dawn was painting the windows gray. I was exhausted, my head swimming with information and politics, but also filled with something like hope. Change was possible. It would be slow, difficult, resisted by many, but possible. The visiting alphas departed with varying degrees of civility. Gregor clasped Dimitri's arm and nodded respectfully to me. Sonia paused to say, "You did well tonight, Elena, better than many lichens would have in your position." Even Victor, in leaving, said, "Perhaps there's more to you than I thought." Perhaps. When they were gone, when the hall had emptied of all but Sebastian, Julian, and a few others clearing the tables, Dimitri finally turned to me. He looked exhausted, the weight of leadership heavy on his shoulders, but his eyes were warm. "You were magnificent," he said simply. "I couldn't have asked for more. I was terrified," I admitted. "I know. That's what made it magnificent. You were terrified, and you did it anyway." He stood, offering me his hand. "Come. You must be exhausted. I'll walk you back to my quarters. You can rest there." "I should go home," I said, but the words lacked conviction. Home to what? To an empty house and a village that didn't want me? "Stay," Dimitri said softly. "At least for today. Rest. Eat properly. Let yourself feel safe for a while. Tomorrow we can discuss what comes next. But today, just stay." I looked into his eyes, saw the loneliness there that matched my own, and nodded. "All right. I'll stay." His smile was like sunrise, and as he led me from the hall, his hand warm in mine, I wondered if perhaps I'd been wrong all along. Perhaps I had been looking for home in the wrong place. Perhaps home wasn't a village or a house. Perhaps home was wherever you found someone who saw you, truly saw you, and chose to stand beside you anyway. I woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the disorienting softness of furs against my skin. For a moment, panic seized me. Where was I? Then memory flooded back. The meeting. Dimitri's quarters. His insistence that I take the bed while he slept in a chair by the fire. I sat up quickly, searching for him, and found the chair empty. The fire reduced to embers. The door opened, and Vera entered carrying a tray laden with food. Warm bread, honey, fresh fruit, and something that smelled like spiced tea. Good, you're awake. Dimitri said to let you sleep as long as you needed. But it's past noon, and he's been pacing like a caged wolf for the last hour. Past noon? I'd never slept so late in my life. I should eat first. Vera set the tray on the table with a firmness that brooked no argument. Then we'll talk about what happens next. I ate because refusing seemed futile, and because the food was better than anything I'd tasted in months. As I did, Vera settled into the chair Dimitri had vacated, her expression thoughtful. The pack is talking about you, she said without preamble. Some are curious, some are impressed, a few are angry, but they're all talking, which means you've made an impact. The question is, what do you want to do with that impact? I don't understand. Don't you? Vera's gaze was penetrating. Dimitri offered you protection for one night, but that night is over. You could return to your village now, go back to your life, or... She paused meaningfully. You could stay. Not as a guest, but as a member of this pack. It's rare, but not unheard of, for humans to be adopted into lichen society. The idea hit me like a physical blow. Stay here? Live among lichens permanently? It should have terrified me, should have seemed impossible. Instead, it felt like a door opening onto a future I'd never dared imagine. What would that mean? I asked carefully. What would be expected of me? Work, same as anyone. We all contribute. Hunters, craftspeople, farmers, healers. You'd need to find your place, prove your worth. It wouldn't be easy. There would be those who'd resent you, who'd see you as an outsider who doesn't belong. Vera's expression softened. But there would also be those who'd accept you, who'd value what you bring. And Dimitri would be pleased if you stayed. You mean as his... I couldn't finish the sentence. I mean whatever you choose to be to each other. Vera stood, moving to the window. I knew his mate, Elena. She was strong, brave, everything a lichen queen should be. But she was also hard, unyielding. Sometimes I wondered if Dimitri felt he could truly be himself with her, or if he was always performing the role of king, even in private. With you? I see something different in him, a softness, a hope. He smiles more when you're near. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. I barely know him. He barely knows me. Sometimes knowing happens fast, when the right souls meet. Vera turned back to me, her smile gentle. But I'm not pushing you toward anything. I just want you to know that staying is an option if you want it. Think about it. Dimitri asked me to bring you to him when you woke. He's in the training yard. The training yard was behind the main buildings, a large cleared space where a dozen lichens were engaged in various forms of combat practice. Some fought in human form, wrestling and sparring with controlled violence. Others had shifted partially, their bodies caught between forms in ways that should have been grotesque, but instead were strangely beautiful, powerful and primal, and utterly controlled. Dimitri stood at the edge, watching, and beside him was Nadia in her pup form, yipping excitedly at the matches. He turned when I approached, and his face transformed with that smile I was beginning to crave. Elena, you slept well? Better than I have in years. I watched two fighters circle each other, their movements fluid and deadly. Thank you for letting me use your bed. You didn't have to give it up. I've slept in worse places than a chair. He gestured to the fighters. What do you think? It's beautiful in a way. The control they have. The trust it must take to fight like that without truly hurting each other. Trust is everything in a pack. He paused, then added more quietly. Vera spoke to you? She did. About staying. And? The single word held a weight of emotion he was trying to hide. I watched Nadia chase her tail, watched the fighters move through their deadly dance, watched the smoke rise from chimneys into the clear afternoon sky. Thought about the village, about the empty house waiting there, about the life that had never quite fit. "I want to stay," I said, and felt the truth of it settle into my bones. "If you'll have me. I don't know what use I'd be. I'm not strong like them." I gestured to the fighters, "but I could learn. I could help somehow." "You're already helping." Dimitri's hand found mine, that now familiar gesture that felt less like a king's courtesy and more like something deeper. "More than you know. But Elena, you need to understand what you're choosing. The village. You'd be exiled from human society if they knew you were living here. There would be no going back. There's nothing to go back to." The words came out more bitter than I'd intended. They made their choice about me long ago. Now I'm making mine. He studied me for a long moment, his amber eyes searching my face for doubt. Whatever he found there must have satisfied him, because he nodded slowly. "Then welcome to the pack, Elena. We'll make it official tonight, a formal ceremony. For now, let me show you around properly. If this is to be your home, you should know it." The compound was larger than I'd realized, spreading through the forest like a hidden city. Dimitri showed me the craftsman's quarter, where workers created everything from weapons to furniture, to the beautiful tapestries that hung in the great hall. The smokehouse, fragrant with curing meat. The gardens, surprisingly extensive, where herbs and vegetables grew in careful rows. The healer's lodge, where Vera trained apprentices in the treatment of both lichen and human ailments. People stopped to stare as we passed, but Dimitri introduced me to everyone, his message clear. "Elena is under my protection. Elena is one of us now." Some greeted me warmly, others were more reserved, waiting to see if I'd prove worthy. A few were openly hostile, their stares promising future confrontation. "That's Roland," Dimitri murmured as we passed a particularly glowering man with scars across his face. "He lost family to human hunters a decade ago. He won't trust you easily. I don't blame him. My people have given him no reason to trust." "Your people are here now, too." Dimitri's correction was gentle but firm. "Your pack, Elena. That means something." We ended up at a small cottage on the compound's eastern edge, near enough to the main buildings to be protected, but far enough for privacy. It was simple. One room with a hearth, a bed, a table, and chairs, but it was clean and sturdy, with windows that looked out onto the forest. "It's been empty since the previous occupant moved to join a mate's household," Dimitri explained. "It could be yours if you want it. You'd have your own space, your independence." I stepped inside, running my hand along the rough wooden table. My own space, my own home. The concept felt foreign and wonderful. "It's perfect. Good." He lingered in the doorway, seeming reluctant to leave. "I should let you settle in. The ceremony will be at sunset, nothing too elaborate. Just a formal welcome to the pack. Vera will help you prepare." He turned to go, and I found myself speaking before I could think better of it. "Dimitri?" "Yes?" "Thank you for giving me this chance, for seeing something in me worth protecting." His expression grew serious, intense. "Elena, I didn't give you anything. You earned every bit of this by who you are. Brave, compassionate, strong in ways that have nothing to do with physical power. If anything, I should thank you for choosing to stay, for believing that what we're building here matters." He left before I could respond, Nadia bounding after him with a farewell yip in my direction. I stood in the doorway of my new home, watching them go, and felt tears prick my eyes, not from sadness, but from something almost like relief. Like I'd been holding my breath for 3 years, and finally, I could breathe again. The afternoon passed in a blur of preparation. Vera arrived with more clothes. Practical things this time. Sturdy pants and shirts that fit properly. Boots that didn't pinch. She also brought basics for the cottage. Blankets, dishes, candles, herbs for cooking. Other pack members stopped by, some out of curiosity, others to offer genuine welcome. A woman named Marina brought fresh bread. A young man named Thomas delivered firewood. Even Julian appeared, his quiet presence somehow comforting, to check that the cottage's roof was sound. "The pack takes care of its own," he said simply when I thanked him. "You're one of us now. That means we look out for you." As sunset approached, Vera helped me dress in new clothes. Not as fancy as the dress from last night, but well made and clean, in shades of gray and green that she said brought out my eyes. She braided my pale hair in a style I'd seen on lichen women, a practical design that kept it secure but looked elegant. "Nervous?" she asked, fastening the last pin. "Terrified," I admitted. "What if I mess up? What if I say the wrong thing? Then you'll be the same as every other person who's ever joined a new pack." "Elena, perfection isn't expected. Sincerity is. Just be yourself. That's who Dmitri chose to protect, after all." The ceremony took place in the Great Hall, which was packed with what seemed like the entire compound. The fire pit blazed, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Dmitri stood before it in ceremonial garb, leather and fur, symbols of his position etched into the leather in silver thread. He looked every inch the powerful king, and yet when his eyes found mine across the room, they softened with unmistakable warmth. Sebastian stepped forward, his voice carrying through the hall. "We gather to witness the formal acceptance of a new pack member. Elena, human-born, who showed courage and compassion to one of our own, who stood beside our king in council, who has chosen to make her home among us. Step forward." My legs felt like water, but I walked to the fire pit to Dmitri, feeling hundreds of eyes tracking my every movement. Up close, I could see the nervous tension in Dmitri's jaw, the hope in his eyes. This mattered to him, deeply. "Elena," Dmitri said, his voice formal but not cold, "do you come here of your own free will, seeking acceptance into this pack?" "I do." My voice didn't shake, which felt like a victory. "Do you swear to honor the pack's laws, to contribute your skills and labor for the good of all, to stand with us in times of hardship and celebration?" "I swear." "Do you understand that in accepting you, we accept responsibility for your well-being, and you accept responsibility for ours? That your actions reflect on us all, as ours reflect on you?" "I understand." Dmitri drew a knife from his belt, ornate, clearly ceremonial. For a moment, panic flickered through me, but his next words calmed it. "In the old ways, blood would be shed and mixed, binding human to lichen. We no longer practice that custom, but the symbolism remains. I offer you my protection, my loyalty, my trust. Will you accept these gifts and offer the same in return?" "I will." He pressed the flat of the blade to my forehead, then his own, a symbolic sharing without the blood. Then he set the knife aside and took both my hands in his grip strong and warm. "Then before the pack, before our ancestors, before the spirits of the forest, I name you Pack. I name you sister, daughter, ally, friend. I name you Elena of the Silver Moon Pack, and I welcome you home." The hall erupted in howls, not threatening, but celebratory, a chorus of voices raised in welcome. Some had shifted partially to create the sound, and it was beautiful and eerie and deeply moving. Dmitri pulled me into an embrace, his arms strong around me, and I felt his whisper against my ear. "Welcome home, Elena." Tears streamed down my face as I hugged him back, as pack members came forward to offer congratulations or simply to touch my shoulder in acceptance. Not everyone was happy. I saw Roland watching from the shadows, his expression dark, but enough were welcoming that I felt something tight in my chest finally loosen. The feast that followed was overwhelming. Long tables groaned under the weight of food. Roasted meat and fresh bread, vegetables and fruits, honey cakes and berry wine. Music started, drums and pipes creating rhythms that made people dance, their movements wild and joyful. I sat beside Dmitri at the high table, and he kept filling my plate, kept ensuring I was included in conversations, kept touching my hand or shoulder, as if to reassure himself I was real. Hours later, when the celebration was winding down and exhaustion was pulling at me, Dmitri walked me back to my cottage. Nadia had long since been taken to bed, and we were alone under a sky full of stars, the sounds of the feast fading behind us. "Today was a good day," Dmitri said as we reached my door. "One of the best I've had in a long time. For me, too." I turned to face him, aware of how close we were standing, of the way the moonlight caught in his dark hair and made his eyes glow. "Dmitri, can I ask you something?" "Anything." Why? Why go to all this trouble for someone you barely know? Why risk your pack's unity for a human outsider? He was quiet for a long moment, his gaze searching my face. When he spoke, his voice was low, honest, because when I saw you kneeling in the mud, helping my daughter without thought for the danger, I saw something I'd forgotten existed. Kindness without agenda, courage without arrogance, and I thought, if the world has people like this in it, maybe there's hope after all. Maybe everything I'm fighting for isn't just a dream. He reached up, tucking a loose strand of hair behind my ear, his touch impossibly gentle. And maybe, just maybe, I'm not as alone as I thought. My breath caught. You're not alone, Dimitri, not anymore. Neither are you. His thumb brushed my cheek, and the air between us crackled with possibility. For a heartbeat, I thought he might kiss me, and I wasn't sure if I wanted him to, or if I was terrified he would. But he stepped back, creating distance, even as his eyes betrayed how difficult it was. Good night, Elena. Sleep well in your new home. Good night, I whispered, and watched him walk away into the darkness, his figure strong and solitary against the moonlit forest. Inside my cottage, I lay in my new bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the day, the ceremony, the feast. The way Dimitri looked at me, the way I'd wanted him to close that distance between us. It was too fast, too much. I'd known him for barely 2 days. And yet it felt like I'd been waiting my whole life to find this place, these people, this feeling of finally belonging somewhere. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, I knew. Roland's hostility wouldn't be the only obstacle I'd face. But tonight, in the darkness of my own home, surrounded by the sounds of my new pack settling in for sleep, I let myself feel something I hadn't felt in 3 long years. Hope. The weeks that followed fell into a rhythm I'd never experienced before. The rhythm of belonging. Vera took me under her guidance, teaching me the healing arts. My hands, she said, had a natural gentleness that made patients trust me, and my willingness to learn made up for my lack of formal training. I spent my mornings in the healer's lodge, grinding herbs, preparing poultices, learning which plants could cure and which could kill. The afternoons I spent with the children. Not just Nadia, though she remained my constant shadow, but the other young ones of the pack. They were less burdened by prejudice than their parents, more willing to accept me simply because I was kind and told good stories. I taught them games my father had taught me, and they taught me to howl properly, laughing at my attempts until I could produce something approximating their wild music. And the evenings I often spent with Dimitri. It started innocently enough. Dinner in the Great Hall, conversations about pack politics and border negotiations, but gradually, those conversations moved to his quarters or mine, became longer, more personal. He told me about his mate, about the love they'd shared, and the guilt he carried that he hadn't been able to save her. I told him about my father, about the slow death of watching him fade, while the village refused adequate help because of his sympathies toward lichens. We're both haunted, I said one night, sitting by my cottage fire while he occupied the chair across from me, Nadia sleeping between us, by the people we couldn't save. Maybe that's why we understand each other. His gaze was intense in the firelight. We know what it means to lose, to carry that weight. But Elena, you can't let it define you forever. Your father wouldn't want that. Would your mate want you to stop living too? I asked gently. He was quiet for a long time. No. She'd be furious, actually. She always said I was too serious, that I needed to remember joy. His smile was sad. I'd forgotten how, until you came here. The space between us felt charged, full of things neither of us quite dared to say. But every day, that space grew smaller. Every shared smile, every accidental touch, every moment our eyes met and held just a fraction too long. They were all building toward something inevitable. Not everyone was pleased with my integration into the pack. Roland remained hostile, his glares following me whenever I passed. Others whispered that I had too much of Dimitri's attention, that I was overstepping, that a human had no business influencing pack decisions. When Dimitri asked my opinion during a minor council meeting about establishing a trade route with a nearby human settlement, I could feel the resentment radiating from certain quarters. "You should be careful," Sebastian warned me one afternoon, finding me gathering herbs in the forest. "There are those who see you as a threat." "A threat?" I laughed without humor. "I'm one human among hundreds of lichens. What threat could I possibly pose?" "You have the king's ear. You have his affection. Don't look at me like that. Everyone can see it. That makes you powerful, whether you want to be or not, and power always breeds resentment." He paused, his expression serious. "I'm not saying this to frighten you. I like you, Elena. You're good for him. Good for the pack. But watch your back." I took his warning to heart, became more aware of my surroundings, of who was watching and how. But I refused to let fear dictate my actions. I continued my work with Vera, continued my time with the children, continued my evenings with Dmitri. If people resented me, that was their burden to carry, not mine. Then came the night that changed everything. A messenger arrived from Victor's territory, a young lichen, bloodied and exhausted, who collapsed in the great hall demanding to see Dmitri. I was there, helping serve dinner, and watched as Dmitri rushed to the messenger's side. "Raiders!" the young man gasped. "Human raiders, armed with silver weapons. They attacked one of our border settlements, killed 5, injured dozens more. Victor wants to retaliate, wants to march on the nearest human village and—" "No." Dmitri's voice cut through the rising murmur of anger. "Retaliation will only escalate into full war. We need to investigate first, understand what happened. What's to understand?" Roland stepped forward, his scarred face twisted with rage. "Humans attacked us with silver, illegal weapons, banned by the treaty. This is an act of war. We should respond in kind. We should respond with wisdom," Dmitri countered. "Not every human supports these raiders. Elena's own village exiled her for sympathizing with us. If we attack indiscriminately, we become the monsters they fear." "She's poisoned your mind." Roland pointed at me, his finger shaking with fury. "Before she came, you would have defended your pack. Now you defend humans while our people die." The hall erupted in arguments, voices raised in anger and fear. I stood frozen, feeling dozens of eyes turned toward me, some sympathetic, many hostile. This was my fault. My presence had weakened Dmitri's position, made him seem soft when strength was needed. "Enough." Dmitri's voice cracked like thunder. "I have defended this pack for 15 years. I have led you through famine, through attacks, through political upheaval. My judgment has kept you safe and prosperous. Do not question it now because I choose diplomacy over slaughter." He turned to Roland. "And do not ever speak to Elena with such disrespect again. She is pack, and you will treat her as such." Roland's jaw worked, rage and something like betrayal warring in his expression. "You've changed, Dmitri, and not for the better. One day you'll have to choose, her or the pack. I just hope you choose right." He stormed out, taking several others with him. The remaining lichens looked uncertain, divided. Dmitri stood in the center of the chaos, looking suddenly exhausted, the weight of leadership crushing down on him. I made a decision then. Stepping forward, I addressed the hall directly. "Roland is right. I have changed things here. My presence has complicated your politics, made your king seem weak to those who value aggression over diplomacy. But answer me this. If you attack that village, kill innocent humans who had nothing to do with the raid, how are you different from the raiders who killed your people? How does revenge make you anything other than the monsters humans believe you to be?" "Easy for you to say," someone shouted. "They're your people who did this." "No." The word came out fierce, stronger than I felt. "My people are here, in this hall. You welcomed me, claimed me as pack. That means your grief is my grief, your losses are my losses. Those raiders don't represent humanity any more than Roland represents all lichens. Both our peoples have good and bad within them. The question is, which do we choose to be?" Silence followed my words. Then Vera stood, her voice carrying authority. "The girl speaks truth. Vengeance is easy. Justice is hard. We should investigate, discover who these raiders are and where they came from. Then we can decide on appropriate action." Others began to nod, the tide slowly turning. Dmitri caught my eye across the room, and the gratitude in his gaze made my chest tight. "We investigate," he declared. "I'll send scouts to the border, speak with my contacts in the human settlements. If these raiders can be identified and brought to justice through legal means, we pursue that path. If not..." He paused. "Then we'll discuss military response. But we do not rush into war. We do not become what we're fighting against. Agreed?" The agreement was grudging from some, enthusiastic from others. But it was agreement. The hall slowly emptied, people drifting away in clusters, arguing amongst themselves. I stayed, helping clean up, needing something to do with my shaking hands. When the hall was finally empty except for us, Dmitri approached me. "You didn't have to do that. Put yourself in their line of fire." "Yes, I did. Roland was right. Your association with me has weakened your position. If I can use that to help forge peace, then at least something good comes from it. You're not a weakness, Elena." He took my hands, his grip firm. "You're the strongest person I know, and what you said tonight, about choosing what we want to be rather than accepting what others think we are, it was exactly what they needed to hear." "Will it be enough? Will they follow you?" "Most will. Some won't. That's leadership. You can't please everyone. You can only do what you believe is right and hope history proves you correct." He pulled me closer, and suddenly we were standing breath close, his hands on my waist, my palms against his chest. "Elena, I need to tell you something I should have said weeks ago." My heart was hammering. "What?" "I'm falling in love with you." The words came out raw, honest. Maybe I started falling the moment I saw you kneeling in the mud, protecting Nadia. Maybe it was when you stood up to Victor. Maybe it's been 1,000 small moments since then. But I can't deny it anymore. Can't pretend this is just gratitude or friendship or political alliance. I love you, Elena, and I know it's too fast, too complicated that you might not feel the same. I kissed him, rose on my toes and pressed my lips to his, cutting off his words with action because words felt inadequate for what I was feeling. He made a sound of surprise that quickly became something else, his arms coming around me, pulling me closer as he kissed me back, with a hunger that had clearly been building as long as mine had. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead to mine. "Is that a yes?" "That's a yes." I laughed shakily. "I love you too, Dmitri. I've been trying not to, trying to be sensible, but I can't help it. You make me feel safe and challenged and seen all at once. You make me feel like I matter. You do matter. You matter more than you know." He kissed me again, softer this time, tender. "Stay with me tonight? Just to sleep, just to be close. I don't want to be alone." "Neither do I." We went to his quarters, and true to his word, we simply lay together in his bed, wrapped in each other's arms, talking softly about everything and nothing until sleep claimed us both. It was innocent and intimate all at once, the kind of closeness that mattered more than passion. Trust, vulnerability, the choice to be soft with each other in a world that demanded hardness. The investigation that followed revealed the raiders were mercenaries, hired by a faction of humans who opposed the treaty and wanted to provoke a war. Dmitri worked with the human authorities who opposed the radicals, and together they apprehended the mercenaries and their sponsors. It was slow, frustrating work, requiring diplomacy and patience rather than violence. But it worked. When the culprits were brought to justice, tried in a joint human lichen court that Dmitri helped establish, it sent a message. Cooperation was possible. Justice could transcend species. Peace was worth fighting for. Roland never fully accepted me, but he stopped openly challenging Dmitri's leadership. Others who'd been skeptical slowly warmed, especially after I helped Vera tend to the wounded from the raid, working tirelessly alongside lichen healers to save lives without regard for politics or prejudice. 6 months after I'd found Nadia in the forest, Dmitri asked me to be his mate in the old way. Not a political alliance, but a genuine bond of love. The ceremony was beautiful, witnessed by the entire pack, even those who'd opposed me. I wore flowers in my hair and a dress of white and silver, and when Dmitri took my hands and made his vows, I saw tears in his eyes. "You saved me," he whispered as we danced at the celebration that followed, Nadia yipping happily at our feet. When I didn't even know I needed saving, you gave me hope again. We saved each other, I corrected, smiling up at him. That's what love does. Years passed. The trade agreements Dmitri had fought for flourished, creating bonds between human and lichen communities. Not everyone was happy. Prejudice didn't disappear overnight. But slowly, steadily, things changed. Children grew up seeing cooperation instead of conflict. Mixed councils became normal. The forest paths I'd once walked alone, desperate and hungry, became safe routes traveled by both species. Nadia grew into a beautiful, strong young lichen, as brave as her father and as compassionate as the human who'd rescued her as a pup. She often told others about the day a pale-haired human found her in the thorns and chose kindness over fear. It had become something of a legend in the pack, the story of how everything changed. Sebastian and Julian both found mates and started families. Vera trained a new generation of healers, humans and lichens working side by side. Even Roland eventually grudgingly admitted that perhaps, just perhaps, I'd been good for the pack after all. And Dmitri and I built a life together that felt like the home I'd been searching for all along. We had our own children eventually, 3 of them, each unique, each beloved. They grew up in a world where their mixed heritage wasn't a curse but a bridge, proof that different peoples could not just coexist, but love. On quiet evenings, when the children were asleep and the compound was peaceful, Dmitri and I would sit by the fire in our cottage, the same one I'd moved into that first day, and remember. Remember the rain-soaked morning when a pup's cry had changed everything. Remember the fear and hope that had brought us together. Remember how we'd chosen, again and again, to build something better than what we'd inherited. Do you ever regret it? Dmitri asked me once, his arm around my shoulders, my head on his chest. Giving up your human life, joining the pack, binding yourself to me. I thought of the village that had rejected me, of the loneliness that had defined my days, of the hunger and fear and constant feeling of not quite belonging. Then I looked around at our home, listened to our children's soft breathing in the next room, felt the steady beat of my mate's heart beneath my cheek. Not for a single moment, I said. This is exactly where I'm meant to be. And it was. Against all odds, despite all obstacles, I had found my place in the world. Not by trying to fit into spaces that were never meant for me, but by having the courage to step into the unknown, to help a lost pup, to trust a lichen king, to choose love over fear. My father had been right. Every creature deserves kindness, especially the ones that frighten others. And sometimes, when you offer that kindness without expectation of reward, you find that you've been given the greatest gift of all, a home, a family, a love that transforms everything. The forest still held its stories, whispered them in the wind through the trees, and now, our story was among them, a tale of how a human and a lichen built a bridge across hatred, how compassion proved stronger than fear, how one small act of mercy had changed the fate of 2 peoples. It wasn't a perfect ending. There were still challenges, still those who opposed what we'd built. But it was a good ending, a true ending. We had found each other, chosen each other, and created something worth fighting for. And that, I realized as Dmitri kissed my forehead and the fire crackled warmly before us, was more than enough. It was everything. The story that had begun with a lost pup and a compassionate heart had become a legacy. Not just ours, but the pack's, the region's, proof that change was possible when people were brave enough to reach across divides. Our children would carry that legacy forward, would build on the foundation we'd laid, would create an even better world than the one we'd fought so hard to achieve. As sleep claimed me that night, safe in my mate's arms, in the home we'd built together, I sent a silent thank you to whatever fate or fortune had led me down that muddy forest path all those years ago. Thank you for the rain that made me take the shortcut. Thank you for the pup who needed help. Thank you for the king who chose to see strength in softness, courage in compassion. Thank you for leading me home.